earlier. Now moving on, the next curve is an ellipse, which has almost the exact same definition as a hyperbola. The only difference is if you pick a point on the ellipse and determine the distance to each focus, the sum of those values is always the same, regardless of which point on the ellipse you pick. The most interesting property of an ellipse, in my opinion, is the fact that any beam of light that passes over a focus will reflect off the curve and go through the other focus, like if the inside of this were a mirror or something. It doesn't matter where the beam comes from or its direction, this will happen, in theory, every time, and this even applies to sound or solid objects, as you may have seen in Numberphile's elliptical pool table video. Most of you have probably heard of or been to one of those rooms where if you stand at the right spot, you can hear someone whispering from very far away, which was even shown in an episode of How I Met Your Mother. One example of this is Grand Central Station in New York. If this person here whispers into the wall, someone in the opposite corner, which is barely cut off in this picture, would be able to hear it with no issues, and this is due to the curvature of the ceiling above them. This phenomenon occurs often due to elliptical enclosures, where if you stand at one focus, your sound, which radiates in many directions, will ideally reflect back to the other focus. And the reflected sound will reach the other focus at about the same time, because as we saw, the total distance a sound wave has to travel, or d1 plus d2, is always the same regardless of which path it takes. One of the most impressive architectural designs where this phenomenon occurs is a Mormon tabernacle located in Utah, where apparently tour guides will drop a pin on the stand where the preacher speaks at, and the resulting sound can be heard throughout the entire building. In fact, if this stuff interests you, there's an entire career you could get into known as acoustical engineering. One thing these engineers do is design concert halls that provide an optimal acoustic experience for the audience. Things like metal panels along the ceiling of this concert hall, or the transparent baffles in this auditorium, are all put into place for acoustic purposes. The Walt Disney Concert Hall you see here is actually one of the most sophisticated concert halls in the world due to its architecture and layout. These engineers work on much more, such as ultrasound, sonar technology for submarines, audio processing, and more, but I just thought this was a pretty interesting field. Then probably the most famous application of an ellipse is seen within orbiting systems. In fact, all bounded orbiting bodies like the Earth, Mars, or even Halley's Comet follow elliptical paths, and what they're orbiting around, or the Sun in this case, is located at the focus of each individual curve. Something more interesting though is that all conic sections, yes, every single one, shows up in
side can hear every word that you're whispering into that corner.
Hello, can you hear me from here?
Hi, Danny, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I sure can, and mind you, we're more than 30 feet away from each other.
نشعر بحركة الأرض حول الشمس بفضل تعاقب الفصول: شتاء، ربيع، صيف، خريف، ومن جديد الشتاء. بفعل ميال محورها، الأرض تواجه الشمس بزوايا مختلفة. مثلا، عندما تكون الأرض في هذه الوضعية، تكون الشمس عمودية على النصف الجنوبي، ويكون هناك فصل الصيف. في نفس الوقت، يكون الظل كبيرا في النصف الشمالي، أي فصل الشتاء. وباستمرار دوران الأرض حول الشمس، السقوط العمودي لأشعة الشمس يصبح على خط الاستواء. يكون الجو في حالة اعتدال في النصفين الشمالي والجنوبي، ويحل بالنصف الشمالي فصل الربيع. وعندما تستمر الأرض في تنقلها، تصبح أشعة الشمس عمودية على مدار السرطان بالنصف الشمالي، وذلك خلال شهري يونيو ويوليوز، فيكون فصل الصيف والجو حار. وباستمرار سفرنا حول الشمس، تعاود أشعة الشمس النزول، وعندما تتعامد من جديد مع خط الاستواء، يحل عندنا فصل الخريف في 23 من شتنبر هذه المرة، ليعود للتعامد مع مدار الجدي، ويكون حينها فصل الشتاء في 21 من دجنبر.